We were supposed to be the cleanup crew. The fire had already moved on. Contained, they said. Our job was to search for survivors, bag the dead, and mark anything left behind. But on our third hour inside the burn zone, the radios went silent. And when I circled back to regroup with my team, I found only their footprints in the ash. That was the first sign that we weren't alone out there. We were deployed 36 hours after the main fire front passed through. Not to fight the flames, that part was already lost. Our job was to find who hadn't made it out. We were Delta 5, a search and rescue unit from the northern sector. No journalists, no crowd, just ash, soot, and body tags. Command said there might still be survivors who hadn't checked in. Others, they didn't expect to be alive. We were 4. Captain Rhodes, quiet, precise, never said anything twice. Nolan, heavy-build medic, cracked jokes that no one ever laughed at. Jace, the newest one on the squad, youngest too. Always too fast to speak. And me. I handled tracking, long-range comms, navigation when GPS flaked out. We rode in on a fire-scarred pickup truck, hauling gear in a bed that smelled like wet canvas and rubber. Ash fell like snow even now. The kind that stuck to your gear, your teeth, your lungs. The sun overhead, just a red smear behind the smoke. By 11:45 a.m., we passed the first perimeter checkpoint, an old ranger station, half collapsed. The fire had eaten its roof. Half the forest to the east, nothing but gray bones. The other half still smoldered in angry streaks. Rhodes stopped the truck. We move from here, foot patrol. Stay sharp. No one argued. We suited up, respirators, goggles, secondary tanks. Each of us wore a thermal locator on our chest. We'd been told if it beeped and didn't show a rescue signature, it was likely heat from the earth or flare-ups. But that wasn't always true. The path through the zone was unnatural. The silence wasn't quiet, it was deafening. No wind, no birds, no bugs, just the crunch of ash under boots. By 12:32 p.m., we found our first corpse. A woman in her 40s, curled against a half-melted boulder, her arms wrapped around a child, both of them long gone. We didn't speak. I marked the coordinates. Rhodes covered their faces. Nolan whispered something I didn't catch. 10 minutes later, we hit Sector B, where our real trouble started. There were tracks. Human. Not ours. Recent. They led deeper into the trees. Jace spotted them first. These are fresh, he said, kneeling beside a soft drift of white ash. A single footprint, barely sunken. The shape was wrong. Barefoot, maybe, or melted tread. Not official boots. Rhodes knelt beside him, scanning. Direction? North-northeast. That was toward the ridgeline. Denser brush. More collapsed terrain. Zero visibility. The kind of area the fire crews had marked as unstable. Someone's alive, Jace added, a hopeful note in his voice. Or they were. Or they wanted us to think that. We advanced slowly, rifles unslung. The smoke grew thicker, rolling low like fog. At some points, we couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. At 13:05, our radios glitched. First, Nolan's headset popped with static. Then, Rhodes's cut out mid-sentence. Mine followed 10 seconds later, just a hiss, like something breathing on the other end. Dead zone? Jace asked. I shook my head. Not unless something's jamming it, he frowned. Who would jam a wildfire zone? Rhodes gave us a look, one that said, move now, talk later. We did. 5 minutes deeper, the tracks began to split. One set broke left, another looped right. The third went straight, into a narrow ravine, still glowing faintly beneath the ash. We paused. 3 sets, Nolan muttered. That doesn't make sense. Maybe it's a search team ahead of us? Jace offered. No team came this way. I checked the logs, I said. Rhodes stared into the ravine, his jaw clenched. We split. 2 and 2. Keep radio attempts every 5 minutes. Meet back here in 15. He paired me with Jace. The second we dropped into the ravine, the air changed. It smelled different. Not just smoke, but something metallic, like blood, on hot stone. Jace was quiet for once, focused. Halfway down, we found burn marks on the stone that didn't match any fire pattern I knew. Clean circles, as if something had been placed there, burning from the inside out. Then, a whisper behind us. We spun. Nothing, but I swear I heard it. My name, whispered from the smoke. Jace and I reached the floor of the ravine by 13:21. The smoke was heavier here, settling like a fog that clung to our legs. Nothing moved. Even our breathing felt too loud, like it echoed off the scorched stone walls. I tried the radio again. Delta 5, come in. Static. No clicks, no response. Just white noise. That hissed like something breathing too close. Jace tapped my shoulder, pointed. A small ridge wound up toward the east slope, half buried under debris. A strange gleam caught my eye. Maybe a piece of gear. Maybe metal. We moved toward it. Ash crunched under our boots, dry and brittle. At the base of the slope, we found the remains of a helmet, melted partially through, fused with bone, no full body, just the helmet, a patch of charred cloth still clinging to the back. I stared at the number faintly stenciled on the blackened strap. 321. Not ours. Not Delta 5. Another unit. I knelt and lifted a melted corner of fabric. U.S. Forestry issue. They didn't log any crews in this zone today, Jace whispered. Or yesterday, I added. Then, a sudden clatter behind us. We spun, rifles raised, but there was nothing. I scanned the area again. The only thing moving was the smoke, curling unnaturally fast across the tree line. Against the quiet, that motion looked purposeful. We need to backtrack, I said. Jace nodded. Or we need higher ground. We chose the ridge. Step by step, the path grew steeper, the rock loose beneath layers of ash. Halfway up, Jace slipped, slid 5 feet down. When I turned to help, I saw something below us, partially buried in the gray. I slid down next to it and started digging with my gloved hands. Ash poured around me, clinging to my sleeves. The body had been covered deliberately, not collapsed on, not burned over, covered, like someone was hiding it. The man was in firefighting gear, no burns on the visible parts. His face mask had been ripped off. One hand clutched a GPS unit, the other was pointing toward the tree line. I looked. There, just above a blackened log, a mark, scorched into the bark, a symbol, not military, not official, just 3 jagged vertical slashes. The air shifted. Even through my respirator, I felt it. The sudden surge of heat pressed in like a breath across my entire body. I looked up the slope. The tree line was starting to glow. Fire? Jace asked, squinting. Can't be. There's no fuel left here. But flames were blooming, low, snaking across the ridge, no crackle, no roar, just a quiet crawling burn. Jace dropped beside me. This fire, it's moving uphill against the wind. I checked my compass. It fluttered wildly. That's not possible, I muttered, unless someone's starting it. He said it like a joke, but no one laughed. We backed away slowly, rifles up. I kept the GPS clutched in one hand, but it was just static now. The coordinates blinked all zeros. Below us, the smoke thickened. I tapped my comm again. Delta 5, respond. This is Lima. We've got visual on secondary fire, unknown cause. Request location ping, over. Still static. We were on our own. We crested the ridge by 1358. The view should have helped, should have let us see miles of terrain. But what we got was thicker smoke, blanketing everything, a red-tinted fog that swallowed whole trees, and standing at the edge of that fog was a man. Not Rhodes, not Nolan. This one stood with his back to us, dark gear, heavy coat, motionless. Friendlies don't move like that, I said quietly. Jace raised his rifle. Hey! Turn around! The figure didn't. Jace took a step forward and the man vanished. No movement, no footsteps, just gone, like he'd sunk into the ash. We didn't chase him. We turned downhill, and that's when we saw the flare, a real one. Red and orange, fired just above the tree line. It arced, crackled, and dropped into the smoke. Someone's alive, Jace said. I checked the time. 14:06. Rhodes told us to regroup in 15. That window had passed, and if someone else was lighting flares, then they weren't on our team. We followed the flare. It led us east toward a cluster of collapsed outbuildings. Looked like old bunkhouses, burned out. Skeletons of wood and metal now. The flare must have landed just past them. Jace jogged ahead. You think it was one of ours? No one in Delta 5 carries pyro flares, only long-range units. So who's still out here? I didn't answer. At the first bunkhouse, we paused. The door was gone, blown out by heat or force. Inside, the air was damp, sharp with chemical smoke. Then came the smell. Rot. We entered cautiously. Ash crunched under my boots. The light cut across twisted cots, melted frames, and in the back corner, bodies. 3 of them. Stacked, not burned, not even scorched, just dead. Gear half removed, hands bound. Jace stumbled back, gagging. What the hell is this? My light landed on a jacket patch. B7 search and recovery. An entire unit. One nobody told us about. I moved closer. Eyes on the details. One had his boots removed, another was missing their radio. The third, face partially buried in soot, had carvings on his skin. Scratched, desperate, symbols. I traced one with a gloved finger, a loop with 3 lines, the same mark we saw on the tree. Jace whispered behind me, voice shaking. Someone's doing this, or already did. Suddenly, a bang. Metal slamming shut. We spun around, rifles raised. From the bunkhouse entrance, a light bobbed, small, flickering. Then a voice, back here. Not Rhodes, not Nolan. We chased it, bursting through the collapsed hallway into open ground and saw another flare rise. This one, fired from 50 yards ahead, not to signal rescue, to lure us. Because just behind it stood someone, hands out, head tilted, face scorched, but smiling. The figure didn't move as we approached. He just stood there. Palms open. Skin blistered. Eyes hollowed out by flame, or something worse. His boots were half melted into his own legs. His chest rose, slowly. He was alive, somehow. I raised my rifle. Hands where I can see them. He smiled wider. Behind us, the trees cracked. Sharp. Sudden. Jace whipped around, weapon ready. Then the man spoke. Voice low, like gravel, shoved through smoke. They buried the others, covered them. But the fire doesn't forget. I stepped forward. Who buried them? He raised a burned hand, pointed, straight behind me. I turned, just in time to see movement in the smoke. Low, fast, deliberate. Jace, I shouted, but it was too late. Something hit him, hard. Low tackle. He went down screaming. I fired. 1, 2, 3 shots into the fog. Screams. Cut short. I ran. Ash kicked up around me, heat biting at my thighs, lungs filling with sour air. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of a creek bed. Bone dry, scorched black. I turned, but the clearing behind me was empty again. No Jace. No man. Only silence. And my own breath. I tried to calm. Delta 5, this is Lima. I've lost Jace. He's gone. Repeat. Jace is gone. Please respond. Static. I sank to my knees, ash pouring off the ledge around me. My gloves slick with sweat. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard my name again. Not a whisper this time. A shout. But not from Jace. From Nolan. I moved through the trees slowly, rifle raised. Every step measured. The smoke here didn't drift anymore. It hugged the trees. Thick, oily, unnatural. At 1526, I saw the flare casing. Still warm, still hissing faintly in the brush. And then, footsteps. I dropped flat, breath held. Out of the fog, stepped Nolan. His face mask was cracked, his forehead bleeding. He limped heavily. One pant leg burned halfway up. But it was him. Lima, he called, voice shredded. I didn't answer until I had visual. Then I rose, waved. Here, he staggered toward me. Fell into a half crouch beside the creek bed. Jesus, he muttered. Thought I was the only one left. I scanned behind him. Where's Rhodes? Gone. He looked up, eyes wide. Last I saw him, he was chasing someone. Someone wearing our patch. I froze. Rhodes said it was a survivor, Nolan continued. But it wasn't. It ran into the smoke and he followed. I tried to warn him. I stared out into the forest. Jace is gone too. Dragged into the ash by something, someone. Nolan just nodded, like he'd expected that. We sat in silence. Then I handed him the GPS. Zeros, he muttered. I nodded. And the comms? Dead since the ridge. Nolan let out a breath. This place is eating us alive. But I was already standing again. We have to keep moving. To where? To the last known tower. The old comm relay. I marked it on the paper map. He blinked. That thing burned up. I reached into my vest. Not this copy. I unfolded the soot-stained corner of hand-drawn grid work. Last known relay, 2 clicks east. Not far, but in this terrain, it felt like 100 miles, and the sun was going down. We moved. It took us over an hour to reach the ridge near the old tower. The terrain got worse. Whole trees, downed, trenches collapsed, fire still glowing beneath the surface, veins like lava. Once the ground nearly gave beneath Nolan's boots, embers under ash like thin ice. We reached the base of the tower by 1652. Or what was left of it. It was half-collapsed, scorched, its antenna bent like a snapped bone. But the emergency box was intact, sheltered in a steel cage, bolted to the frame. I yanked it open, hand trembling, power, flickering. The sat beacon was still functional. I pressed it. A slow, rising whine confirmed the ping had launched. The blue LED blinked once, twice, then steady. We did it, Nolan whispered. I nodded. Now we hold out. We climbed the tower base and set up shelter in the shadow of the frame. It was the most cover we'd had in hours. I dropped my pack, finally letting my body sag. And then a voice. Behind us. Help. We turned. Weapons up. It was Jace. dragging one leg, face covered in soot, but it was him. Barely. Jesus, I muttered, rushing to him. He collapsed into my arms. I got away, he rasped. I think they were playing with me. They? Nolan asked. Jace shook. There's more than one. They move through the ash. They're burned, but they're not dead. Not normal. I felt him tremble. Then he looked up at me, and his voice changed. They're watching you right now. I recoiled. What? Jace's hand shot out, grabbed my vest too fast for someone that weak. Too hard. His other hand reached into his coat. Nolan raised his rifle. Drop it, Jace smiled. His voice was not his own. They never left the fire. And then he collapsed, fully unconscious, or pretending. We tied Jace's hands. I didn't want to, but Nolan insisted, and deep down, I agreed. After what he'd said, how he said it, I wasn't taking chances. We sat in the frame of the tower, watching the sun lower through the smoke. Our beacon blinked every few seconds, a soft blue glow in a dying world. Jace slept, or pretended to. Either way, he wasn't moving. At 18:04, the radio came alive. This is Sierra Dispatch. Repeat, Sierra Dispatch to Delta 5 units. We received beacon activation. Sit rep. Over. I nearly crushed the radio in my hands. This is Lima. We are 2 personnel alive, 3rd wounded. Coordinates match beacon. Immediate evac requested. Copy Lima. Ground team is 20 out. Hold position. Do you need med evac? I glanced at Jace, at his hands, his stillness. Yes, prepare restraints. Confirmed. Nolan sat beside me, fingers twitching on his rifle. You think it's still him? He asked. I didn't answer, because deep down I wasn't sure. Jace stirred once, maybe in pain, maybe not. When he opened his eyes again, they were distant. Blank, but not empty. The air grew colder as night fell. The ridge behind us turned black. The world shrank, down to the flickering red line of fire on the horizon. And then, below us, headlights, piercing the smoke like twin suns, bouncing across the trail. Rescue, Nolan breathed. We signaled with our lights. The truck climbed hard up the ridge, coughing smoke, tires digging through ash. 2 figures emerged in yellow gear, radios crackling. Delta 5? Here, I called. He's injured, delirious, might be in shock. They helped us carry Jace. I felt every muscle scream from tension. Nolan gripped my shoulder once before falling in behind us. As we reached the vehicle, I turned. Something moved at the tree line. No sound, no heat signature, but eyes in the dark, watching. I stared for too long. One of the rescuers grabbed my shoulder. You coming? I climbed in. As the doors slammed shut, I saw the thing in the trees lean back, just far enough to vanish into shadow. The wildfire had taken so much, but it hadn't taken everything. Some things stayed behind. It was supposed to be over, but it wasn't. 2 days later, I sat in the debrief tent. Nolan was gone, shipped back to HQ for medical clearance. Jace was sedated, strapped to a hospital bed, monitored around the clock. They said he suffered severe heat exposure, psychological trauma, but that didn't explain the things he whispered in his sleep. Under the ash. They're waiting. No face, just teeth. I stood outside his tent once, watched him shake through restraints. His heart rate would spike randomly. Once he opened his eyes and just stared at me. Didn't blink, didn't speak, just looked, like he was trying to remember something that never belonged to him in the first place. Command tried to sweep it all under the rug. They logged the firefighting unit we found as unscheduled presence and blamed confusion on overlapping agency maps. Said the markings we saw on the trees were nothing, probably heat damage. They even reviewed the footage from our helmet cams. Except, half the files were corrupted, melted segments, hours missing. We knew the truth. I kept the copy of the hand-drawn map, the one that led us to the old relay. The spot where the flare rose? They never found anything. No boot prints, no casings, and the man with the half-melted face? No record, no name, no trace. The fire took people, but some things didn't burn. 1 year later, I went back. Not into the burn zone. That's still sealed off, but close to the edge where the new growth is pushing through scorched dirt like broken fingers. I brought the map with me, and Jace's old tag. He doesn't speak anymore. Not really. They moved him to long-term care. Some days he hums, sometimes he cries, always when it rains. Nolan never came back. He sends one text every year, still breathing. You? I answer, yeah, but I don't sleep. I left the tag on the fence at the forest perimeter, hooked it to a nail someone left there. Dozens of others hang there now. Makeshift memorials, lost units, burned crews. They say the fire was natural. They say everything in that zone is dead. But I remember what we saw in the fog, and I remember what the man said. They covered the others, but the fire doesn't forget. I don't think the fire took them. I think something else lived in the smoke. And now it's just waiting for the next one. Because deep in the trees, where even wind won't go, some things keep walking, even after they burn. If you're still here, thanks for listening. Stories like these don't leave you right away. If it stayed with you too, leave a comment. I read every one. Subscribe if you want more, and until next time, stay safe and stay sharp.